Welcome to the deep dive. It's where we really dig into your sources, like articles or research, or even just your own notes, and we try to figure out, like what's really important.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a shortcut to really understanding something
Hmm.
without having to, read through a ton of stuff.
Right. And so today we're going to dive into this really cool model of personal identity. It's called the identity tree.
It's pretty fascinating. It's like using, the life cycle of a tree to kind of show how our identities, like, they form and change and all that.
Yeah, it is. So we're going to kind of climb this identity tree together, and we're going to start right at the bottom. The foundation.
The roots,
Yeah, the source material talks about, the seed and the roots, and it says that's like the core of who you are.
right at the very beginning.
Yeah. So tell me about these roots. Like, what makes them so special?
Well, the seed, that's like your nature, right?
Yeah.
Like the part of you that you're born with. And that doesn't really change. But the roots, that's where it gets interesting.
Mhm.
The source material talks about two levels of roots:
Okay.
small consciousness and great consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
So small consciousness is like, your own individual awareness, like your sense of me as separate from everyone else.
Right.
It's what lets you recognize yourself in the mirror every morning.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But great consciousness, what is that?
It's kind of hard to explain. It's like an awareness of awareness.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
tapping into, like deeper wisdom and peace. It's kind of like what you might feel during like deep meditation,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But it's like something that can be with you all the time.
Wait, so you're saying like we all have this like inner wisdom that we can just tap into?
That's the idea.
I mean, I've definitely felt those moments of, like deep peace, but I never thought of it as something that I could like choose to access.
Well, that's what's cool about this model.
Ah.
It's saying that this wisdom is always there, just waiting for us to discover it. And by connecting with that great consciousness, you can find this sense of peace and stability, even when, like, life is crazy.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, that could really change how we deal with like stress and uncertainty.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting because the source material connects this great consciousness to the shared subconscious of humanity.
To share what?
Subconscious. It's like saying that our roots are all connected to this, like, vast network of wisdom that we all share.
Whoa, okay. So like even though we're all individuals, we're also like part of something much bigger.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're all trees in the same forest, all drawing nourishment from the same source.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Mm.
I love that. So as we move up from the roots, we get to the trunk of the tree and things start to feel a bit more like real.
And more solid.
Right. It's all about our well-being,
Mm.
like both physically and mentally.
The source material is really clear about this. A healthy trunk is essential for a thriving tree. And that's true for us too. Our physical and mental health is the foundation for everything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you can't expect a tree to grow if its trunk is all weak and diseased, right?
Right.
And it's the same with us. We have to take care of our bodies and our minds if we want our identities to like, grow strong.
Exactly. And inside that trunk, we've got our senses and our memories.
Oh, yeah.
And they're constantly shaping how we experience the world.
So it's not like we just take in information passively. Our past experiences, our memories, they all change how we see things.
Right. It all affects our perception.
It's like they say perception is reality.
It is. And it
Yeah.
makes you wonder how much of what we think is true is really just based on our past experiences
Yeah.
and the way our senses and memories have kind of filtered the world.
Yeah, that is kind of freaky. Like, how much control do we really have over how we see things? But also, maybe it's empowering, like if we realize that we can actually change those perceptions.
That's a great point. And that leads us to the next part of the trunk, which is position.
Position.
Yeah, it's like, the roles we play in different situations, all the different hats we wear throughout the day,
Right.
parent, employee, friend. Each position comes with its own, like, expectations and behaviors.
I mean, just think about how many times a day we have to like shift gears mentally depending on who we're with and what we're doing.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
It's like we're putting on different costumes.
Exactly. And those positions, those costumes that we wear, they directly influence our cognition, which is the next level of the truck.
Cognition, like our thinking.
Yeah. The source material says that our positions actually shape our beliefs, our mental models, even our values.
I can see that. I mean, if I'm in my podcast host position right now, I'm thinking about things like clarity and pacing and connecting with the listener.
Right.
But if I'm in my like parent position, my focus is totally different. It's
Yeah.
all about like safety and nurturing and setting a good example.
Right. It just shows how adaptable our minds are. We can adjust to all sorts of different situations. But it makes me wonder, Are we always aware of how our positions are shaping our thoughts and beliefs? Or are we sometimes just on autopilot, letting those external roles control our inner world?
That's a good question. I know I've definitely caught myself like slipping into certain mindsets without even realizing it, just based on the situation I'm in. It's like my brain is on autopilot,
Sure.
running these pre-programmed scripts.
That's exactly what it is. And that's why self-awareness is so important. The more we understand how those external positions affect our inner world, the more we can make conscious choices about how we think and behave.
So we're not just like puppets being controlled by our
No,
roles.
not at all. But recognizing those influences is the first step to taking back control.
Ooh, that makes me feel better. So we've got this solid trunk, right? Grounded in well-being, shaped by our senses and memories, with all these different positions affecting our thinking. But now things are going to start to branch out. Literally.
This is where we move from the more like fixed parts of identity to the parts where we have more, conscious control. And the first branch is fantasy.
Fantasy. So we're talking about like daydreams and imagination.
Exactly. Fantasy in this model is all about our ability to imagine possibilities, both good and bad.
Okay.
It's that realm of what if and what could be.
But the source material also talks about how it can be dangerous to spend too much time on the negative side of fantasy, what they call catastrophic thinking.
Right. And that's where things can get a little tricky.
Yeah.
If we let those negative fantasies run wild, they can really drag us down. Like branches overloaded with anxiety and worry.
Yeah, it's like letting those what-if scenarios spiral out of control.
Exactly. And it makes me wonder, do you think people underestimate the power of their fantasies, both the good and the bad?
Oh, absolutely. I know I've done it, like letting my imagination run away with me, you know? Conjuring up all these worst-case scenarios that never even happen. It's exhausting.
It is. And that's why this identity tree model is so helpful. It reminds us that those fantasies are just thoughts,
Yeah.
not necessarily reality. And by having a more balanced approach to fantasy, we can use it to fuel our creativity and motivation without getting bogged down in negativity.
So instead of letting our fantasies control us, we can learn to use them as tools, for growth and positive change.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next branch, which is intention.
Intention.
This is all about conscious choice, about setting goals and making plans to achieve them. It's the bridge between our inner world of thoughts and our outer world of action.
I like that distinction. It's not just about daydreaming. It's about taking those ideas and turning them into concrete steps.
Exactly. Intention is about aligning our thoughts with what we want to achieve,
Yeah.
about making choices that move us in the right direction.
So it's about taking responsibility for shaping our own reality instead of just letting external forces control us.
Exactly. And that leads us to the third branch, expressiveness.
Expressiveness.
Yeah, this is how we communicate our intentions, how we put those plans into action. It's about bridging the gap between what we want to do and what we actually do.
So it's not enough to just have good intentions. We actually have to express them, make them real in the world.
Precisely. And that can take so many forms: words, actions, creative pursuits, even just the way we spend our time and energy.
It makes you think about all the little ways we express ourselves every day without even realizing it.
It does. And it makes me wonder, do you find that your expressiveness always lines up perfectly with your intentions? Or are there times when your actions don't quite match what you really want to be doing?
That's a good question. I think we've all been there, Maybe we say yes to something we don't really want to do, or we hold back from expressing how we really feel because we're scared or insecure or something.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
And it just highlights how important it is to be more self-aware and authentic in how we express ourselves.
So it's not just about what we do, but why we do it. Exactly. By being more mindful of the motivations behind our actions, we can start to close that gap between intention and expression and bring more alignment and authenticity into our lives.
Okay, now things are getting really interesting. We're moving up to the very tips of the branches, and we find the fleeting leaves and blossoms.
The most delicate part.
Yeah, and this is where we're talking about the outward displays of identity. The clothes we wear, the stuff we own, even wait for it, how we present our children.
It's a fascinating concept, right? These leaves and blossoms represent the ways we try to show our identity to the world, to create a certain image or impression.
But the source material is pretty clear about the potential problems here. It warns against letting these outward manifestations become like a crutch for a shaky self-image.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that true identity comes from within, deeper than just outward appearances.
Right.
And if we're not careful, we can get caught up in this cycle of trying to prove ourselves through these fleeting displays instead of building a strong and authentic sense of self from the inside out. It makes you think about all the ways we try to show off our identity to the world. Have you ever felt that pressure to present a certain image, even if it didn't feel totally authentic to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we all feel that to some extent. Whether it's feeling pressure to dress a certain way or to achieve certain things, or even to make our lives look perfect on social media,
Yeah.
all those external pressures can really mess with our sense of self.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap, especially in a world that's so obsessed with image and validation from other people.
It is. But this identity tree model encourages us to question those pressures, you know,
Mm.
and to cultivate a sense of self that's based on something deeper and more true to who we are.
So it's about recognizing those leaves and blossoms for what they are, temporary displays that don't really define our worth.
Exactly. And that brings us to the fruits of your labor, which
Mhm.
represent all our achievements, all the tangible results of our efforts. But here's the thing. The source material emphasizes that those fruits, while they might feel good in the moment, are also fleeting,
So we shouldn't get too attached to them.
right? This identity tree model reminds us that while achievements can show progress and growth, they don't define our worth as human beings.
It's easy to fall into that trap, though, isn't it? To let our sense of self get all wrapped up in our accomplishments, to base our self-worth on those external measures of success.
It is. And that's why it's so important to develop a sense of self that's not dependent on getting validation from other people. To realize that our worth as individuals is inherent. It's not based on what we achieve or accumulate.
It's a powerful reminder to detach our sense of self from the temporary nature of achievements. But how do we actually do that? How do we let go of that need for external validation?
It's a process, for sure. And it starts with cultivating a deep sense of self-acceptance and self-love.
Yeah, it really is a journey, like learning to value ourselves for who we are, not just for what we do.
Exactly. But it's a journey worth taking. And this whole identity tree model gives us a map,
Mm.
to guide us toward a more authentic and fulfilling sense of self.
Okay, so speaking of maps, there's one more part of this model. We got to talk about shaking the tree. And honestly, it sounds kind of scary. Like, is everything we've learned about to fall apart?
No, not at all. Think of it more like a little nudge, like a way to encourage growth and change. The source material says that not every part of the tree is equally easy to change, but that doesn't mean we're stuck.
Okay, good. So which parts are easier to shift and which ones take more work?
Well, the branches, those are the easiest to work with. Our fantasies, intentions, and expressions, those are the areas where we have the most control.
Yeah.
We can kind of trim away the branches that aren't helpful and encourage new growth. We can direct our energy in ways that support our well-being.
So like if I'm stuck in a rut or if I'm letting those negative fantasies take over, I can actually work on changing those branches.
Exactly. You can challenge those negative thoughts, you can set new intentions, and you can find healthier ways to express yourself.
Okay, but what about the trunk and the roots? Those feel a lot more permanent.
Yeah, they are. To a certain extent. I mean, our basic nature, our core values, those are pretty deeply rooted. And our past experiences, those have shaped us in big ways.
Right.
But even those deeper levels can change. It just takes a different approach.
So we're not totally limited by our past or by our genes?
Nope, not at
Okay.
all. This identity tree model says that deep, meaningful change is always possible. It might involve challenging those limiting beliefs, or reframing past experiences, or even tapping into that great consciousness at the root level
Right.
to access that deeper wisdom and resilience.
So it's not about ripping the whole tree out of the ground. It's more about taking care of it from the bottom up,
Yeah,
strengthening the trunk, tending to the roots, and letting new branches grow.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the core of this model, the idea that personal growth is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
There will always be parts of our identity trees that need some attention.
Yeah.
Branches to prune, roots to nurture. It's an ongoing process.
That makes sense. It's like gardening. You're always tending to the plants, making adjustments, dealing with the changing seasons.
It is. It's a great analogy. And it shows how important it is to be self-aware, to pay attention to the little signals our identity trees are giving us.
Yeah.
Which branches are doing well, which ones are struggling, where do we need to focus our energy to keep things growing?
This has been a really insightful deep dive. I'm so glad we got to explore this whole identity tree model. It's given me a lot to think about.
Well, me too. It's a powerful framework.
And a huge thank you to you, our listener, for sharing this with us.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this to our attention.
We started with the unchangeable seed, and we climbed all the way up to those fleeting
We
achievements.
covered a lot of ground.
We did. We've seen how all the different parts of the tree fit together, and we've learned how understanding those different levels can help us make better choices about who we want to be, how we want to grow, and how we want to connect with the world around us.
It's all connected.
It is. We hope this deep dive has given you some new ways to think about your own personal journey, some tools to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of your own identity.
And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, to dig deeper into the ideas that really resonated with you, to see how this model might fit into your own unique path of growth and self-discovery.
So what part of the identity tree are you going to think about today? Which branch might need a little shake? Which fruit might need a little appreciation?
Those are good questions.
They are. Until next time, happy exploring. It really is. It's like learning to appreciate ourselves for just being us, not just for what we do or achieve.
Exactly. And this identity tree model, it gives us a framework,
Yeah.
a way to think about how to create a more authentic and fulfilling sense of self.
Okay, so speaking of frameworks, there's one more piece of this model that we need to explore, and that's shaking the tree. And to be honest, it sounds a little bit intense, like is everything we've talked about to like crumble?
No, 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 not at all. It's not about destruction. Think of it more like, giving the tree a gentle shake to encourage growth and transformation. The source material makes it clear that not all parts of the tree are equally easy to change. But that doesn't mean we're stuck.
Okay, good. So which parts are more flexible? And which ones are more deeply rooted?
The branches, those are the most adaptable. Our
Ah.
fantasies, intentions, expressions, those are the areas where we have more conscious control. We can kind of trim away the branches that aren't serving us anymore, and we can encourage new growth. We can direct our energy towards what really matters.
So if I'm feeling stuck, or if I'm letting those negative fantasies get the best of me, I can actually work on changing those branches.
Exactly. You can challenge those negative thought patterns, you can set new intentions,
Mhm.
and you can find healthier ways to express yourself.
Okay, but what about the trunk and the roots? Those feel so much more permanent.
They are, to some extent. I mean, our core nature, our fundamental values, those are pretty deeply ingrained. And our past experiences, well, those have shaped us in significant ways. But even those deeper levels can be transformed. It just takes a different approach.
So we're not completely limited by our past or by, our genetic predispositions.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The identity tree model suggests that deep and meaningful change is always possible. It might involve challenging those limiting beliefs that we've been carrying around,
Mm-hmm.
or reframing past experiences in a more positive light, or even tapping into that great consciousness at the root level
Right.
to access that deeper well of wisdom and resilience that we all have within us.
It's not about ripping the whole tree out of the ground and starting over. It's about nurturing its growth from the ground up, strengthening the trunk, tending to those roots, and allowing new branches to emerge.
Exactly. And that brings us to the heart of this whole model, the understanding that personal growth, it's not a destination, it's a continuous journey.
Right.
There will always be parts of our identity trees that need some TLC, branches to prune, roots to nurture. It's an ongoing process.
It's like gardening. You're always tending to the plants, making adjustments, working with the changing seasons.
That's a perfect analogy. And it highlights the importance of self-awareness, paying attention to the subtle signals that our identity trees are giving us. Which branches are thriving? Which ones are struggling? Where do we need to focus our energy to promote healthy growth?
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I'm so glad we got to explore this identity tree model with you. It's really giving me a new perspective on things.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's a powerful way to think about personal growth.
And a huge thank you to you, our listener, for sharing this amazing model with us.
Yeah, thanks for sending this our way.
We started with that unchangeable seed, that core essence of who we are, and we climbed all the way up to those fleeting achievements, those external markers of success.
And we saw how all the different parts of the tree work together.
Yeah.
The roots, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the blossoms, the fruits. It's all interconnected.
It is. And
Yeah.
we explored how understanding these different levels can empower us to make more conscious choices about how we want to live our lives, how we want to grow, and how we want to connect with the world around us.
It's about becoming more aware, more intentional, more in alignment with our true selves.
Exactly. We hope this deep dive has sparked some new ideas for you, given you some fresh perspectives on your own personal journey, and maybe even some practical tools to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of your own identity.
It's all about exploration, discovering what works for you.
So what part of the identity tree will you be reflecting on today? Which branch might need a little shaking? which fruit might need a little savoring. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep growing. Until next time, happy exploring.